Hello you guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Ruby, I live in New York City, and this is my lifestyle channel. So if you haven't already, please take a quick second to go ahead and click that subscribe button down below. We are trying to reach 7K by the end of March. That is the next goal here for this channel. I post new videos 3 times a week, so there's always tons of new content to watch. I also upload daily content on TikTok, multiple pieces of daily content actually, so be sure to go follow me over there. We're trying to hit 20,000. That's the next goal for our TikTok. I know that I always say this, but I truly am so excited for today's video because I'm actually introducing a brand new monthly series. It's gonna happen at the end of every single month here on this channel. At the end of the month slash like the first few days of the next month, kind of depending on like what day this video lands on. If you know me at all, you know that I am such a huge reader. I literally take my Kindle with me everywhere I go, and I also read a ton at home. I feel like anytime I just have free time, I'm always reading. And recently I had a lot of you guys say for both TikTok and YouTube you'd like to see more book content, which I was like, I can totally do. I feel like over the last year, reading has just had this huge resurgence, and I'm totally here for it. I've always been such a huge reader, but I love seeing all these really big content creators really getting into it as well. But I thought it would be really fun, like I said, at the end of every month to kind of do a book wrap up and talk about every single book that I read during the month, give my thoughts, a quick synopsis on the book. And so obviously this is going to be a breakdown of all the books that I read throughout the month of January. Without further ado, I think we should just jump right into this. I'm going to have links for all the books down below. I'm probably going to link them through Amazon. That way you can either purchase like an actual physical copy, or if you have a Kindle you can purchase it that way. I truly am just like so excited though. So let's do a little book breakdown and just get into it. So during the month of January I read 4 books, which I feel like is a pretty solid number, especially considering like kind of the life that I live and how busy my schedule can get sometimes. I work for myself full time, which I think a lot of people assume means that I have tons of time on my hands, but I feel like in reality it means that I am super busy and constantly being pulled in like 30 different directions. I do social media consultations, I have an online production business, I do social media. There's a lot going on, right? But I still found time to read 4 books. During the month of February, I want to up that to hopefully like 5 or 6. Even though it's a shorter month, I feel like I have less to do. And this month, I actually just stuck to fiction books. I didn't have a ton of nonfiction books that I was like dying to read this month. And so I decided, you know what, let's just like have some fun and read a ton of fiction. Both from some authors who I already know and love, who I've been looking to read more from, but also some authors who it was my first time reading any of their books. Now, obviously, because I read all of my books on my Kindle, I don't have the physical copies to show you guys, so I'm just gonna pop a picture of the book in the corner. We're gonna break down the synopsis, and then I'm gonna give you guys my thoughts and kind of like my rating out of 5 stars. Okay, so the first book that I read this month was The Comeback by Ella Berman. This was actually a recommendation that I saw on Kenzie Elizabeth's Instagram. I get a lot of book recs from her. I feel like we have very similar tastes when it comes to fiction. Okay, so I'm just gonna read you guys the synopsis again. I'm pulling this straight from Amazon. Grace Turner was 1 movie away from Hollywood's A-list, so no one understood why at the height of her career and on the eve of her first Golden Globe nomination, she disappeared. Now, 1 year later, Grace is back in Los Angeles and ready to reclaim her life in her own terms. When Grace is asked to present a Lifetime Achievement Award to director Abel York, the man who controlled her every move for 8 years, she knows there's only one way she'll be free of the secret that's already taken so much from her. The Comeback is a moving and provocative story of justice, a page-turner about a young woman finding the strength and power of her own voice. I really enjoyed this book. I will say at first, for me personally, it started a little bit slower, but what kept me engaged is I just really, like, I don't know, I really connected with the main character, which is funny because the main character, Grace, and I really have like nothing in common other than the fact that like she is in the entertainment industry and so am I, obviously on like a much smaller scale as of right now. But what I also really admired about this book is it definitely showcased the negative side of being in the limelight that I feel like is still so stigmatized and like not easily able to be talked about. Without going too much into the book and spoiling it, it does definitely touch on kind of like the Me Too movement, which I think is incredibly important to keep talking about and make every single voice heard. And although this book is fiction, that side of it felt very timely and prominent and important. I also really liked the realistic dynamic that was painted between Grace and her sister in the book. Basically just kind of like siblings don't always have to be like super close 24/7, but when you need them most, they'll be there for you. I feel like a lot of times in a lot of books, pop culture, movies, we see siblings who are like BFFs, they're together 24/7, and like, to be honest, that's not the reality for everybody. But I do think even if you have one of those relationships where you and your sibling aren't close 24/7, you know, when you need them the most, they'll be there for you, you'll be there for them. And I really liked that realistic painting. A really big thing for me when reading, and obviously this is a big thing for a lot of people, but it's the ending of a book. If I'm gonna invest hours and hours of my time into reading, the ending it just better be satisfactory. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't mean that it has to end on a high note, but it needs to end in a way that I feel like I haven't wasted my time. You know what I mean? This ending was just that. I felt satisfied. I felt like, you know, I hadn't wasted my time while reading. And overall, like I said, I really enjoyed this book. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5, only because, like I said, the beginning was just a touch slow for me, but I really enjoyed the book and I would absolutely recommend it. Okay, so the next book I read this month was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. This is an author who I've already read quite a few books from. The first book that I read from Lisa Jewell was Then She Was Gone, which I read almost 2 years ago, I believe, which is crazy. It was so good. It sucked me in from the first page. I finished it in like a day and a half. I'm a pretty fast reader, honestly, so like if I have time to read, I can like plow through multiple books in a week. And this was just one of those books that I was like, I love, and so I knew I wanted to read more from Lisa Jewell. Time just kind of got away from me. I feel like I got invested in different books. And then this month I was like, you know what? I really want to read more from this author. I love a good like thriller novel, but I don't want it to just be like scary for the sake of being scary. I want it to really make you think. And that's kind of how I am with movies too. I really don't like scary movies that are just like blood and like jump scares. For me, that just like doesn't do it. I really want it to be something that like makes you think, and when the plot twist happens, you're like, wow, I like really didn't see that coming. It wasn't formulaic at all. And The Family Upstairs was just as good. Again, I literally finished this in like an afternoon. I spent like 6 hours reading and I finished the entire thing. Okay, so let's read the synopsis. I just had it open on my phone and I already lost it. Soon after her 25th birthday, Libby Jones returns home from work to find the letter she's been waiting for her entire life. She rips it open with one driving thought: I am finally going to know who I am. She soon learns not only the identity of her birth parents, but also that she is the sole inheritor of their abandoned mansion in London, worth millions. Everything in Libby's life is about to change, but what she can't possibly know is that others have been waiting for this day as well, and she is on a collision course to meet them. 25 years ago, police were called to the house with reports of the baby crying. When they arrived, they found a healthy 10-month-old happily cooing in her crib in the bedroom. Downstairs in the kitchen lay 3 dead bodies, all dressed in black, next to a hastily scrawled note, and the 4 other children reported to live there were gone. In The Family Upstairs, the master of bone-chilling suspense brings us the can't-look-away story of 3 entangled families living in a house with the darkest of secrets. This book was so good, like I already said, but I can't stress it enough. So yes, again, it was definitely like a thriller, mystery, novel, kind of psychological thriller, but it's not scary in any means. It's just kind of one of those books where you have no idea where it's going. This is also just something that I really enjoy. I love reading books based in London. I absolutely love London. It's a place that, I don't know, I really resonate with. I've always said if I could, like, you know, if me and Kevin could live anywhere, I would obviously have a place here in New York, but I'd also love to have a place in London. And so, I don't know, I love reading books that are based there. That was just a nice little, like, extra thing for me. So, like the synopsis said, this story follows this girl named Libby who all her life has wondered, like, who her birth parents were, what her story is, and then on her 25th birthday, she learns that she has inherited this, like, huge mansion worth millions. She doesn't come from money, and so it kind of changes her life in so many ways, but also throughout the story she learns where she came from, the super dysfunctional family that she comes from, and just the many lives that were intertwined in the making of her, basically. The twist in this book I definitely like did not see coming. Same as when I first read Then She Was Gone. Literally when I read the moment, like the peak plot twist moment, I like gasped while I was reading it. This one I didn't like audibly gasp, but I remember saying to Kevin, like as I was reading this, I was like, okay, I did not see that coming. And obviously like when you're reading a mystery novel or a psychological thriller, anything like that, your brain kind of already tries to like connect the dots, and so it's really satisfying when you get to that plot twist and it's not what you were expecting. Just because I feel like that makes it even more fun to read. Now, I actually just learned yesterday that there is a second book in this kind of like The Family Upstairs series that I am so excited to read. I'm probably gonna read it this month in February, as long as it's available through the library app that I rent from. If it's not, I'll probably still buy it, but typically I like to rent from the Libby library app just to save a little bit of money. But yeah, this was so good. I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5. I enjoyed every single second reading it, which I know sounds funny when it's like a mystery or like darker novel, but I truly enjoyed it so much. The next book that I read this month, in the month of January, was Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. I know so many of you guys are gonna be watching this and being like, Ruby, you had never read Before We Were Strangers. I know. I feel like it's one of the most popular, like currently most popular, talked about fiction, romance books, and to be honest, it was one of those books that I was really trying to like save. I had heard so many people loved it so much, and so I was like, oh, like a part of me like doesn't want to read it because I don't want the like kind of unknown to be like over. I don't know if that sounds weird, but I actually know of a lot of people who have read this book multiple times, but they've even said like the first time is just like so magical. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to read this. I had to be a part of the conversation. And honestly, I'm actually already rereading it. I'm not going to include it in my February book breakdown because I'm obviously including it here, but like as soon as I was done with it, I was like, I like want to read this again. You can probably already tell by the sound of my voice that I like love this book, but before I get into it, let's read the synopsis. Okay, so I have a longer synopsis and then like a shorter one. I'm gonna do the shorter one just to like not spoil too much, but it basically says, from the USA Today best-selling author of Sweet Thing and Nowhere But Here comes a love story about a Craigslist missed connection post that gives two people a second chance at love 15 years after they were separated in New York City. Just as much as I love books based in London, I love books based here in New York City. Obviously, I live here, I grew up here, so I can picture everything in a book. And even when it's a fiction novel, if it's based in New York City, I feel like to me it just has some sense of like realism to it because I can really picture everything. I'm gonna need a movie adaptation of this like ASAP, but I also hesitate to say that because I don't know if it's gonna be able to beat how wonderful this book is. I definitely enjoy a book about love, a book about romance as much as the next person, but I really want it to feel realistic even if it's fiction, right? I want something that truly shows like the ups and downs of a relationship, or people breaking up and coming back together, or people just staying broken up. And this book did just that, while also giving me just like all the feels. The book follows these two characters, Matt and Grace, and it tells a story through multiple different points in their life. College, post-grad, in the real world, living in New York City, getting older. They knew each other in college, they both went to NYU, and then they lost touch, and then 15 years later, Matt briefly sees Grace getting onto a subway. Doesn't even get to say hi or anything, but they lock eyes. And so then, like the synopsis says, one of them posts something on misconnections, which is definitely like a real thing on Craigslist. I've read so many like hilarious but also heartfelt misconnection posts. And then from there, the story unfolds. I loved everything about this book. Like I said, I loved this book because it's a really good reminder of, you know, if it's really meant to be, it will be. Love will always find its way back to you, and love is worth fighting for and looking for. The characters, you just felt so connected to them. You felt for them every step of the way. It was such a beautiful story. It's about love, heartbreak, reality, the messiness of it. I feel like all of the, I was about to say all the scenes, because obviously like I see this book like almost as a movie in my head as I was reading it, but I feel like every single chapter or moment in the book where they spoke about really, you know, raw and vulnerable relationship things, it just felt so truthful. And that's the thing, right? Like good fiction, while the story itself might not be real, it's always rooted in the truth, which makes you relate to the characters, it makes the story more real, it makes you more attached to it. But what was so fun about this is, while I said that like, yes, it's rooted in truth and kind of the reality of the ebbs and flows of a relationship, there were also things about it that just felt so romantic and nostalgic, and I loved this. It was just so good. It's such a sweet story. It was emotional. I cried during it. I'm someone who cries reading books all the time. I feel like books oftentimes make me cry much more than movies or TV shows, just because like, I don't know, you're seeing like your version of it in your head versus like a movie is telling you how to see it and how to react to it, right? Whereas like, I don't know, books just make me feel something different. I cannot wait to read more from Renee Carlino. I really wanted this to be my first read from them, just because I knew that this was the book that like everybody was talking about and still is talking about. But now that I've read it, I can't wait to read more. Literally like 10 out of 5. Like I can't even It's so good. Okay, finally, last but certainly not least, the last book that I read in the month of January was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Honestly, at this point, who has not read a Colleen Hoover book and who is not completely obsessed with her? She has a way of writing fiction books with characters who are so relatable and a story that instantly brings you in, like within the first page. And although I've read quite a few books of hers already, I still feel like I have so many to go, and I'm trying to space them out because, again, I don't want to read like all of them in 1 month and then be like, what do I do? I was really interested though to read It Ends With Us because I feel like a lot of people, I've watched so many different like videos and TikToks of people rating like all of Colleen Hoover's books, and I feel like while the rest of the list might vary for most people, I feel like a lot of people have said It Ends With Us is like their favorite book of hers. And so I was really excited to read it and see for myself kind of like where it ranked in my lineup so far. So let's read the synopsis. Lily hasn't always had it easy, but that's never stopped her from working hard for the life she wants. She's come a long way from the small town where she grew up. She graduated from college, moved to Boston, and started her own business. And when she feels a spark with a gorgeous neurosurgeon named Ryle Kincaid, everything in Lily's life seems too good to be true. Ryle is assertive, stubborn, maybe even a little arrogant, but he's also sensitive, brilliant, and has a soft spot for Lily, and the way he looks in scrubs certainly doesn't hurt. Lily can't get him out of her head, but Ryle's complete aversion to relationships is disturbing. Even as Lily finds herself becoming the exception to his no dating rules, she can't help but wonder what made him that way in the first place. As questions about her new relationship overwhelm her, so do thoughts of Atlas Corrigan, her first love and a link to the past she left behind. He was her kindred spirit, her protector. When Atlas suddenly reappears, everything Lily has built with Ryle is threatened. An honest, evocative, and tender novel, It Ends With Us is a glorious and touching read, a forever keeper, the kind of book that gets handed down. I feel like I can't talk about this book without kind of spoiling it a little bit in the sense of like revealing one of the subject matters that it touches on. So this is kind of up to you whether or not you want to keep listening to this part. If you haven't read It Ends With Us and you don't want a spoiler, skip ahead. If you're okay with that or you've read it, keep watching. This book touches on domestic violence and physically abusive relationships, which again, while this book might be fiction, the subject matter is something that is incredibly real. This book was so powerful for a variety of reasons, and obviously besides the heavy subject matter, there were points of lightheartedness and love and laughter. The character of Lily is one of my favorites from any Colleen Hoover book. I just loved the way that she was written. I loved her strength and her vulnerability and ability to look inwards on herself. I just thought that all the characters were written really well. I specifically really liked the relationship between Lily and Ryle's sister Alyssa, and then also the growth of the relationship that we were able to see between Lily and her mom throughout the book. Again, it's a 5 out of 5 for me, kind of similar to Before We Were Strangers. I would give this like a 10 out of 5 if I could. Now, shockingly enough, I will say that I don't think that this was my top Colleen Hoover book, and I mean, you guys obviously know I loved it. I literally just rated it like a 10 out of 5. But in general, comparing it to the other Colleen Hoover books I've read, I think I would put 1 or maybe 2 before this. And again, that's not to say that I didn't like this book. It's so hard to rate Colleen Hoover books because they're all so good. It's literally just like a matter of like a slight change of preference. I would say maybe I would put Regretting You above this, and maybe Heartbones. I really liked Heartbones. I feel like it's a very underrated book from Colleen Hoover. It's actually the first Colleen Hoover book that I ever read, so I feel like a very personal attachment to it just because it was my first time like diving into her reading, or to her books I should say. But they're all just so good. I really did love It Ends With Us. It's a very powerful book. One, again, that I'm very excited to read again, just because I think that there are different things to notice the second time that you read a book. And it's just a very brave and beautiful story. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. Even though it was really hard to read at times, I think that it was a very powerful read. But there you guys have it. That wraps up all of the books that I read throughout January, along with my mini reviews. I really hope that you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. And again, click that subscribe button down below. We're trying to reach 7,000 hopefully by the end of March. I am just so excited to bring you guys this book series, and let me know if you want even more reading content on top of this, because I definitely could do that. Like I said, it's a big just hobby and love of mine, and something that I do all the time. Anytime I have free time, I always have my head in my Kindle. Be sure to also follow me on all of my other social media networks, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, where I post daily. Clubhouse, you can check out my Amazon shop where I always have like book recommendations on there too. I love you guys so much. I hope that you guys are staying safe, happy, and healthy, and I will talk to you all again very, very soon in my next video. Okay? Bye, everybody.